It's the second Federal Executive Council meeting of the year. As usual, in attendance are ministers, some aides to the president, and other government officials. Almost 4 hours after the meeting commenced, it is time to outline the decisions taken. The major decision being the status of the Oronsaye Committee recommendations.
There is a landmark decision that was taken by the Federal Executive Council today. Recall that in 2012, the administration of former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan instituted the so-called Oronsaye report.
The report was not implemented that year. Another attempt by the administration of former President Muhammadu Buhari in 2014 also failed.
And the aspects that are applicable to mergers, as I said, subsuming and scrapping.
This time, it has scaled the hurdle and is to be implemented.
Our administration has taken a very bold step towards implementation on aspects of the Oronsaye panel report, which speaks to mergers, subsuming, scrapping, and relocation of parastatals, agencies, and commissions of federal government. This is in line with the need to reduce cost of governance and ensure that we have streamlined efficiency across the governance value chain.
She then outlines some of the organizations affected.
For agencies that are required to be merged, I'll take it. National Agency for Control of AIDS, HIV/AIDS, NACA, to be merged with the Center for Disease Control in the Federal Ministry of Health. National Emergency Management Agency to be merged with the National Commission for Refugee Migration and Internally Displaced Persons. The Border Communities Development Agency to be subsumed to function as a department under the National Boundary Commission. The National Salaries, Income and Wages Commission to be subsumed into the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Allocation Commission. The National Blood Service Commission to be converted into an agency and relocated to the Federal Ministry of Health.
The team makes it clear that these changes will not lead to staff disengagement.
The fact that the Oronsaye report has been approved and adopted by Council today does not mean that people will lose their jobs. All those who are employed, whether they have been moved, subsumed, or scrapped, will find accommodation within relevant government agencies.
The committee has been given 12 weeks to ensure all legislative amendments and restructuring are implemented to make this a reality. Council has also outlined some guidelines for universities to abide by following their exit from the IPPIS. The universities have also been encouraged to do more in terms of research outputs, even as government promises to provide sufficient funding. From the Presidential Villa, Lanre Lasisi, Channels Television News.
All right, so that was after the FEC meeting. So this morning now, it's the FG's plan to implement this Oronsaye report that we'll kick off with here today. We've got, as you might have seen in that welcoming image there, Dr. Omar Binda joins us here. He was actually, at the time when all of this was going on, the CEO of the National Office for Technology Acquisition and Promotion. It used to be called, I think it was NOTAP at the time. Good morning. Thank you for coming on. Now, I've not seen NOTAP in this list as part of those that are supposed to be merged. I might have to look again because not that I was expecting to see it. But at the time, you were invited to that committee. You made presentations before that committee. And you've also been in a similar committee to reduce agencies of government. So talk to us about what transpired at the time, first of all.
Oh, thank you very much. You know, one great thing about our country and our leaders that people should recognize is that there is always this urge to make us perform better. Whether it is policy-wise, whether it's institutions, whether it's funding, there's always that urge to actually push us to the next level. And the core issue in all these administrations since 1999 is how do we reduce poverty? How do we create wealth? How do we share and circulate the wealth? How do we create jobs from all levels? And therefore, because of that urge and poverty being big, over 60% in Nigeria, they must look at the implementation structures to see who is implementing what, where is he implementing, how is he implementing. So you could remember back in 1999 when President Obasanjo came in with his team, the very first thing they did in 1999 was to set up the Joda panel. My late uncle, the Ahmed Joda panel, composed of many very well-known, barrister from Plateau State and Adebo Akenke and so on. So, and with Dr. Aliyu as secretariat. And the first mandate was that rationalize all the poverty alleviation institutions in Nigeria and give us a concise poverty alleviation structure and manning levels and so on. And Joda panel did that. So that was when you could remember institutions like NALDA was scrapped, People's Bank was scrapped, Family Support and FEEP and so on, all them. But the implementation led to the formation of NAPEP, if you could recall. Yeah. And that was it. And it was implemented, NAPEP was established, and that particular committee went through several committees. Ango Abdullahi had a committee to study the Ahmed Joda report. There was the white paper committee by another committee by the late Professor Borishade, who was the Minister of Education then Power, and the head of service had also participated in the articulating of the white paper. So now NAPEP came up, it started its work, and as we speak, NAPEP itself is scrapped. Even this administration did not meet NAPEP. So then the next administration saw all these efforts by government to take it sharp. So Oronsaye, you could recall, was the permanent secretary in the State House. He has very, very rich from being a director, a permanent secretary. He moved to become the head of service of the Federation. Very concise gentleman who wants Nigeria to develop now. And he can face anything. And he was assigned to actually look at this rationalization. He was given all the other reports, the AIDA report, the Ahmed Joda report, the Ango Abdullahi, the NAPEP, everything. And that was when we went. I was the Director General of NOTAP. So every single agency, ranging, I think, from 500 to 600 agencies in this country, everybody will go and sit there and participate with Oronsaye sitting there. And that's where you get their mandate, what have you been doing? And they managed to readjust everything to see overlapping functions, institutional rivalry, lack of efficiency, overbloated staff, and all these things. And that was how the report came up. And you recall that particular committee, it was inaugurated in 2011. And by 2012, they had submitted their report. But the white paper did not come out, gazetted, until 2014. So it's very, very bold to see the current President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, taking up that report. And recall, even President Buhari in his administration tried. He actually saw the gap of time between 2014 and his own administration and white papered it. There's a team, but the implementation could not go. So I think this committee has all these documentation and preparations, and I think the driving force aligned to the agenda of the president is actually to get Nigeria working through these implementation agencies.
So it's something you welcome.
Yes, I think Nigeria needs this, in addition to many other things. I participated at so many levels, and I can see the potholes all over. There has to be a systemic strategy.
Do you see the ministers reducing?
Well, if the ministries are going to reduce, certainly the ministers will reduce, because ministers head ministries. But there are ministries where you don't have ministers of state, and the ministries are big. Possibly there may be some movements there too. So some kind of reform may pop up. But certainly the most important thing is get the agencies, the MDAs, to make sure that following this report and other reports to function better. But we must also have a very strategic system to measure efficiency and impact. It is only that can tell you that you're not doing it or you're doing it.
Dr. Bindir, I'm glad that you talked about the core function of civil service or public service, which is about core policy implementation. Well, I'm looking at the preamble of the white paper on the Oronsaye report. Says, in 1970, the federal government expanded the scope of the operations of the public service from core policy implementation to active participation in all sectors of the economy through the establishment of agencies, parastatals, and commissions. With the benefit of hindsight, do you think we have done well in that regard? Do you think those in public service understand that their job is to ensure the smooth running of the business of government through efficient and effective operations of public service?
Well, I think it's a learning curve. Nigeria has come a long way. We can say yes in some areas that we're making progress, and certainly no in some areas. But for me, the actual measure of performance of all our structures is actually the level of poverty among our people. And the poverty is dictated by, first, people must have basic necessities of life: food, shelter, clothing, sanitation, and so on and so forth, everywhere, and this is the purpose of government. At the second level, we must make sure that our people are skilled, they have competencies, they can be able to deliver one or two things as producers or transporters or processors, so that they can be able to get an income. So you are productive and you are creating wealth and you are distributing the wealth, and therefore nerves will become. At the third level, we must ensure that our institutions also develop such that these type of reforms does not shake the system too much. So institutions must mature so that if you're fighting corruption, the institution is concise. If you are doing agriculture productivity and food security, the institutions are precise. If you are doing financial issues, the institution. So this is the three levels of the value chain that I can come up with. But certainly, when you hear reforms of this nature, a very serious government has taken steps like this. It means business. There are lapses, there are shortages, and therefore doing this.
Well, Dr. Bindiru, it's also interesting. I mean, Malkwe asked you this question the other time, but perhaps it begs a revisit, because there was this position of a civil society organization in 2020, a partnership to engage, reform, and learn, and they were raising some of the challenges that the implementation of the Oronsaye report could encounter, one of which is, and I quote, if the government were to proceed with the mergers proposed by the Oronsaye report, but commit to not implementing job cuts, it would have to bear unsustainable costs in redundancy and the loss of efficiency and productivity. Do you agree?
Well, yes and no. Yes and no, because the committee that has been selected, the team of very highly experienced and professionalized people, this factor certainly will be part of the agenda of the implementation. We've had the Honorable Minister of Information very clearly on TV saying that job losses is not part of the procedures for implementing this report, and therefore we should take his word and wait until we see how the committee cascades or breaks the whole report and the implementation procedure. So it's very too early to now start saying yes and no, they will do or they will not do. But I think we should give them the benefit of time to very quickly come up with the implementation procedure, and then the system can respond.
Well, another angle to that, about should there be any form of job costs or whatever, speaks to what you mentioned earlier, that one of the reasons for the Oronsaye report, the implementation of the report, is to cut the cost of governance. But in that same review, the position that some will also raise is the cost of severance that the federal government will have to pay. In the short run, downsizing the public sector carries the corollary costs in the payment of huge severance entitlements. Do you think it'll be worth the cost in the short, medium, or even in the long term?
I think the Oronsaye committee did all these assessments. The white paper committee considered all this before they agree or reject some of the recommendations. But on the long run, let people not look at just removing somebody or moving someone to another place, only on money terms. Efficiency is part of these cost cuts or effective utilization of resources. And therefore, if you are putting round pegs in round deep holes, it will stand well and be able to serve you well. This activity alone could actually lead us to higher productivities, showcasing that we're efficient in using our resources, showcasing that we're efficient of using our competencies. But probably the way the agencies are done, there's too much overlapping of functions. Once you have overlapping of functions, you have institutional rivalry. All this constrains institutions to perform very well. So by implementing this, possibly you may not face this type of challenges of paying people off or whatever. Let us not look at it only on the Naira and Kobo level in terms of the implementation, but let us also look at it on the potentials to create jobs and new jobs, the potentials to create new wealth, the potentials to distribute new wealth, the potential to lead our country into a united workforce to be able to make progress, and so on and so forth. This is how you look at the global picture of this type of reform. So it's not just the Naira and Kobo.
Well, talking about what you mentioned about overlapping functions, you know, there will be also the issue of territoriality. This is definitely a change management project. And you have mentioned one of the ways in which to approach it, which is that of communication. And those who have occupied a particular level of life now have to come down. Some agencies of government scrapped, never to exist again. Some were never supposed to be in the first place. So what kind of communication should be going to who? Because, you know, the civil service is in various layers, you know, the CEOs, level 15, 14, level 15, 16, 17, and lower, and the middle management, as you can say, lower staff, and then those on the lowest rung of the ladder in each of these agencies. What kind of communication and how should this kind of communication be going to these various levels? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about human beings who have emotions and who are still going to remain in the system.
Well, I will answer this question using a very small experience, and possibly you can draw the answer from there. When I moved in 2015 to become the Director General of National Office for Technology Acquisition and Promotion, NOTAP, the responsibility of NOTAP is so strategic that even me, when I went to the institution, it was already 30 years old, a 30 years old agency. Its own function is to say we have so many technology-driven industrial systems, banking systems, you know, and so on and so forth, operating in Nigeria, and we see them till today. Foreigners are doing things. Only yesterday we saw the commissioning of the power plant in Aba, and you saw a lot of foreigners giving the technical services. The question is, should Nigeria continue like this forever, or will there be a day when you will look at the TV, all the engineers, all the managers, everybody will be Nigerian and the system is working? So that's the responsibility of NOTAP, but it has intellectual property implications. But then there's another institution called the Copyright Commission, which is in the Ministry of Justice. And copyright is also an intellectual property. But then you have another department in Ministry of Investment and Trade, which is the commercial something department. They have the patenting, they are the ones to patent Nigerian technology, and they also have the registration for the trademark in that. So here we are, NOTAP is in Ministry of Science and Technology, Copyright Commission is the Ministry of Justice, and then the Commercial Law Department is in the Ministry of Trade and Industry. So when I came, the three agency heads or the heads of these institutions were not in talking terms. Why? Because who will talk to the international patent system? Who will talk to who will travel and so on? They were there. Well, I took a decision that there must be communication here if Nigeria is to make progress. So I went to visit the commercial law director. She was shocked. I went and said, oh, Dr. Bindo, oh my God, how are you? I said, Ma, how are you? We greeted and everything. And I said, we have to work together so that Nigeria can benefit. I carried her. We went to Ministry of Justice and met the DG, Adeopo, Professor Adeopo there. He was also shocked. And we sat down and we said, look, we are handling a very important sector to this country, and therefore we must work together. We will all have to organize our workshops together. We have to travel to these key conferences together, and we have to be comparing. That is the kind of communication I expect. There has to be an institutional clustering, regular consultations. The Federal Executive Council is meeting every Monday. It's not for nothing. This is communication. Okay. So this is the level of communication. There must be human-to-human communication technically.
So as we wrap up now, we know that while the federal government is trying to merge this, we also know that the National Assembly is in the business of making laws and also creating new institutions. As a matter of fact, we watched the other day how they're about to create some development, is it the Northwest Development Commission and also the Southeast Development, and the proliferation of commissions that are just about to start, more or less. So how do you think that while we're trying to cure something somewhere, we do not end up back where we started with the creation of so many more agencies and parastatals that do not have their home in any ministries or are just standalone institutions?
Again, is communication. The National Assembly is a very key institution to this process. Already all these institutions are established by law. These laws must be amended or repealed or whatever. That is their job, and it has to be done very, very quickly. Communication with the executive is very, very important. So the way I look at it is that to safeguard these things constantly happening, we must constantly be reviewing our system. As I said before, poverty tells you if you are succeeding or not. There is no way that you can have the cluster of ministries and institutions that are performing well and poverty is also growing. These two doesn't coexist. Once you see poverty is increasing, unemployment is increasing, wealth creation is increasing, insecurity is increasing, it questions your own procedures. And these are the two that you should always checkmate. Poverty should be coming down. Our country should be more united. We should have less communal insecurity. And once we are reviewing this and comparing these two, I think we'll minimize these kind of reforms in the future.
Restructuring customs too. Oh, by the way, I think next will be Uwe's report. Yeah, good idea, I know. Well, so thank you for coming on, Dr. Omar Benda, former Chief Executive Officer, National Office for Technology Acquisition and Promotion, NOTAP.